This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Care Notes with Doug Wilber from Cherish Companions. And Doug, I understand we have a very compelling subject to talk about today.
Yes, it's compelling. A lot of people might find it interesting for a lot of reasons. I actually, one of the biggest issues with people as they're aging is the whole issue around incontinence. Incontinence is also kind of one of the dirty little subjects where people are embarrassed to talk about it. And I want to confront that directly because it really prevents people from getting the assistance and help that they need. And so sometimes, one of the issues actually as people get older is, they have incontinence. They sometimes know, sometimes they don't. And in almost all cases, there's some denial that can be involved.
Sure.
And what ends up happening is that they kind of live with an issue, but unfortunately other people live with it because things like, people's sense of smell diminishes as they get older. So they may not smell that they have a urine odor, but I guarantee you others are smelling
Sure.
that there's a urine odor. And so I think dealing with this for people who are either caregivers or who are the recipients is a really important thing. We have with us the fortunate pleasure of having Steve Sczesny, who is actually the senior national account executive, hopefully I got that right, with the Tranquility brand of adult diapers, as people say, or
absorbent underwear.
Absorbent underwear. Right, exactly. And PullUps and other things that people are using. And so anyway, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am with Principal Business Enterprises. We're an Ohio corporation, just outside of Bowling Green, in between Bowling Green and Toledo, in the great state of Ohio. We've been in business for over 60 years. Started manufacturing pillow paws, non-skid footwear for fall prevention 60 years ago. And that led to incontinence products because we had a plant in Europe, and the Europeans said, if you really want to make a difference, make an incontinence product that works. And the ownership at Principal Business were, tell us about that. They said, well, mainly paper manufacturers have been making the product. So unfortunately, they weren't very absorbent. So we created a super absorbent, pull-up, briefs, underpads, wound care, pads you take inside your underwear that, are really almost a medical grade and serving a need for those that are struggling with incontinence that need a better product.
So why is that super absorbent part of it so important? Because, let me just give you a little bit. A lot of people that I come in contact with, they're trying to scrape by. They're trying to, afford care. They're trying to afford, medical bills that are so frequent as people get older, co-pays, other things. And so when it comes to something like a pull-up or something along those lines, the idea is I'm just going to get something inexpensive. And I would assume that there is some sort of premium that comes with having something that is more absorbent. Why is absorbent actually important?
Yeah, that's, very important questions, because I like to use the analogy, do we buy the cheapest toilet paper we can get for home? And the answer is typically no, we don't, because the results, right? And then if you go to a commercial establishment or, wherever, you take this toilet paper that they have and it's so thin and you're pulling more off, is it cheaper? Probably not, right? And then how are the results? So with incontinence products, it's kind of the same analogy. You get what you pay for. Now, premium doesn't necessarily mean more expensive, because what we have proven with Tranquility is you need less product. So if you get a premium absorbing product, you're going to change a lot less than you would with the other brands. So it gets really difficult when you get lower performing products, because you leak, you have accidents. To your point earlier, odor, because the lower performing products won't kill the odor. And when it leaks on the clothing, bedding, furniture, it's hard to get that odor out. And then people smell that and they form a judgment on grandma, right, when they come to visit. So with Tranquility, the product keeps you dry, keeps you from leaking, gets rid of the odor of urine, allows for longer wear time. And this is important. So if we're going out to be independent, you want to go to lunch with family or friends, you really don't want an accident. You really don't want to rush to the bathroom to change, right? And then have an accident, God forbid. So less usage, better performance. And then my big thing is better sleep patterns, because when you have higher performing products, you're warm, you're dry, you don't leak, and you don't have to do unnecessary bed strips and clothing changes, which can be very difficult, especially 2 in the morning. You know, when a baby's wet and cold, they wake up and cry. When an adult is wet and cold, you wake up and, you know, go toilet yourself. It could be at risk for a fall. You don't want to be doing bed strips and clothing changes. So it may be more expensive per unit, but you're going to use less units and you get what you pay for. Like, and we could use that analogy in cars and anything else. So for the budget conscious, the average consumer tries 7 brands of incontinence products before they get to one that they think works well for them.
Yeah. So really, you're a better way of looking at it would be value, correct? Yeah. I mean, because, you know, the value of an incontinence product is measured on, like you said, the number of changes, and also, you know, is it working? Because, you know, if to your point, if you're changing sheets or doing other things, you're running a load of laundry. You're using detergent to run that load of laundry. You don't want it sitting for a long time, because then it does penetrate the urine smell and other things. You want to get that thing cleaned very quickly. So you're probably not running a full load. Plus, you don't necessarily want to run other clothes with something that has, you know, something with a strong odor in it, and whether it be urine or even a bowel movement. So in the end, yeah, I think you have to say, you know, yeah, I may pay more per unit, but am I really spending more money, or am I spending overall less money? And
well, and then the majority of people struggling with incontinence or experiencing incontinence are female. In fact, just over 70% of those that are challenged with incontinence are female. And you want to keep the environment dry. The microclimate is so important to avoid a UTI, risk for a UTI, right? Or skin challenges. So by being super absorbent, it's constantly wicking the moisture away from the skin and keeping that area dry. And so for prevention of possible infection, right? That's key, because with the lower performing products, there's a lot of moisture there.
And have you guys done research where you've actually shown lower UTIs, or have shown the things like fungal infections, which is really common, yeast issues, things like that?
Yeah, so we have a lot of experience in the VA environment, both home care and inpatient. So in inpatient, we were part of a small study, and their goal was to reduce pressure sores. So this is one example. And unfortunately, there's a high rate of pressure sores in long-term care. This was a nursing home environment. We helped reduce pressure sores by 83% overall in an environment with elderly people, and it was a non-friction bed covering with our product. And what we proved is that we were able to get rid of the moisture. So for a full-blown UTI study. We haven't done that yet. They're really difficult to do, but what we do know is we inhibit the environment for a UTI to occur. So in one of the state veteran homes we worked with, their UTIs went down 73% after converting. That was here in Ohio, to Tranquility. No other interventions at the time. So, but we weren't part of the study, but we know anecdotally, by keeping that environment dry, it reduces the risk dramatically for UTIs. We know pressure sores, and I have posters and stuff, and I don't know if this is going to show, but this is one that a study where we measured the moisture on the skin with brand X, and in the middle graph, the moisture went down with Tranquility. The right graph, they went back up, but this gentleman had severe diaper dermatitis. The top photo, week 1 of the trial, middle photo, just 1 week into it. And then the bottom photo was 2 weeks later. So we were able to improve the skin that much in 2 weeks. I don't know if that shows on the screen.
Yeah, it
but
does.
Yeah.
What they did is they measured the moisture with a transepidermal water loss meter, which measures urine. And it was so significant, the drop in the moisture, that your body's able to heal by itself if it's not constantly being assaulted by the urine, because the urine changes the pH environment, and it can be very caustic, and especially if you mix it with fecal, it gets really tough on the skin. So you want to get that off of the skin as soon as possible.
So obviously urine makes sense, because having something that's super absorbent pulls that down, locks it away the way your technology works. How does it work as far as like a bowel movement? Because obviously that's a different situation, and so and really kind of a different type of incontinence. You know, I when I'm doing assessments and other things, I really try to assess whether someone's incontinent of bowel or whether they're incontinent of urine, or both. Because it does make a difference on approaches and other things. So how does the Tranquility brand work as far as with a bowel movement?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that are really key to controlling or to containing bowel movements. In our product, we have something called a cuff guard, and it's these channels that are on either side of the product. And the cuff guards, I think it'd be hard to demonstrate here. What they do is they keep the fluid, the liquid, in the core, but if there's liquid stool, it keeps it inside the core, and any liquid will be absorbed. But the solids will stay on top, but they stay inside the channels. So they keep it from coming out, even if it's, God forbid, explosive diarrhea or something like that, it keeps it in the core. So containment is key on that. Not all products have these cuff guards. In fact, a lot of them do not, but Tranquility does have the cuff guards. And so it helps contain it while the polymers will absorb any liquid. And then with a bowel movement, you want to change obviously very soon. With the urinary void, you can wear it for quite a while without it affecting the skin. And Tranquility also eliminates the odor of urine almost completely. I do the demo where I pour straight ammonia right into the product, and it knocks down the odor. So with stool, it doesn't completely get rid of the odor because the solids stay on top.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, with a bowel movement, you wouldn't want it to get rid of the odor totally. I mean, because of the fact that you want to detect that it's there. Yeah. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you do want to remove that as quickly as you possibly can. Whereas if urine gets locked away, it may not be as much of a rush in that situation.
Correct.
So is your product more for the individual who cannot get their incontinence corrected in any other way, or is it in conjunction with other methods?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's both. I would say, we were speaking earlier, so say somebody that had prostate surgery and they're still trying to gain function and control. ideal for a person like that that's going through the process. So in the beginning where there's heavy voids to the end where very light drips, dribbles, we've got you from this part of the spectrum down to that. And that's part of a protocol where you're trying to get back to toileting normal. Some people that's not possible. And our product is real key for that. Our product could be in conjunction with a pad and pant type system, and then you work your way to just a pad as you gain more control. So it can be very discreet pad, all the way to where we have super absorbent underpads to protect the surface for somebody that maybe doesn't have control anymore with dementia being on the rise. This is a huge tool for any caregiver caring with somebody for dementia, because sometimes people, they just can't tell you, oops, I had a void, and they never get a chance to even get to the bathroom.
Right.
So from one end of the spectrum to the other.
So, and that's actually kind of interesting because, when we think of incontinence, hopefully we're not spending a lot of time thinking of incontinence, but when we think about incontinence, the issue is there really are different types of incontinence. Now, one of the things that's interesting is, I grabbed your calendar and perused through it before, and there you have a lot of products. There's many different things that you guys offer, and what that indicates to me is there must be different types of incontinence. You hit on one thing, which was, say, a post-surgical, where someone has had surgery, and so they have incontinence for a period of time. In case that you mentioned was the prostate, so there's also, other things, which is, someone tries to get to the toilet and they're shuffling to the toilet, and oops, it comes out, and so there's kind of an accident prevention. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about types of incontinence that you guys have solutions for.
Yeah. So, if it's the risk factors, if you're female and you've had children and you live long enough, you win the trifecta there of being at risk for experiencing some level of incontinence, whether it's just stress incontinence, you could laugh, you could sneeze, you could cough, and, have some urge, to your point, like, oh my gosh, I got to get there, and maybe I can't get there in time, to where you have partial control. My mom, I'll give an example. She struggled with emphysema, and for her to get up and get to the bathroom expeditiously just wasn't possible. And so she would have an accident on the way to the bathroom, right? Where she's trying to control it, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough time to get there.
Right.
And then there's people that could be on meds that give them very high, right, output diuretics, things like that. There could be comorbidities, Parkinson's, right, diabetes, heart. There's all kinds of things that unfortunately affect your ability to control your flow.
Right.
And so to the point where prostate surgery, unfortunately, sometimes they never fully regain it.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just like a constant dripping faucet almost, to the point where others just lose control. Maybe somebody with dementia, it's just, there's no control there. And so unfortunately, you have to disseminate which one it is as a caregiver. And what we have found through research is 91% of people will fib about their level of incontinence because it's embarrassing. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do is, we want to kind of help take the stigmatism away, out of the conversation, because this is quite common, especially as we age. So it's no different than maybe somebody, Viagra was at first like, whoa, people didn't want to talk about it. Now it's like you could buy it, on a corner, right? It's just, it's common. Same thing with incontinence now. It's like, you know what? you get older. I work in the VA a lot, and the veterans, we tease and we say, sometimes the plumbing leaks. Sometimes it does. So we got a pad for that, or we got a pull-up underwear for that, or we got an insert for that, right? And to your point earlier, that through somebody that's trying to get back on a toileting program, this is a great tool to assist you to get there as you regain function. So there's different levels of incontinence, definitely.
Right.
Stress, urge, right?
Yeah, and different levels of how much people void too. So for example, someone who is kind of an accident protection, some of those people may just leak a little bit, it may not be a full flow, of urine and stuff like that. They get to the toilet and they, are able to finish off, but in the process they've leaked, more than just a drip. It's they've had a bigger problem. And then you have those people that are really heavy voiders, and the ones, especially with urine, that are heavy voiders, that can happen at different times. So at night, you find some people that are continent during the day become incontinent at night. And sometimes that incontinence can be light, and sometimes that incontinence can be extremely heavy. So what you were saying before, which is waking up because you're wet and cold, happens, and in those situations, and then a bigger problem can happen. And I'll tell you some stories of things that I've seen that kind of are around that, and that is, that trip to the bathroom can look like they are going to the toilet because they're wet and cold, and on the way they fall. Or I've had situations where I've seen where people have actually gone to the bathroom, they've leaked on the floor, because whatever didn't absorb well. And then they get up afterwards and they're trying to clean up, and then they slip on the floor and they break a hip. And these are all real things that I've seen and have happened, where something that is absorbent makes a big difference. And that's why it was so, Steve and I met at a meeting that was being held by the Home Care Association of America and the Ohio Council, which is another association. And Steve happened to have a display there. And as we were talking, he was talking my language, because they were really trying to find solutions. And I love that there was a company that, and it wasn't just about, spin and marketing. It was really trying to say, what can we do that can make a difference in someone's life, and bring really good products to that, which goes back to where I started, which is, the idea that you have a lot of different products. So my example that I had before of like a heavy wetter at night, but they're continent during the day, and maybe they just want a little bit of accident protection. Would you recommend a different product at night than during the day in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think that's also a great question, because our number one selling product is our overnight pull-up. And it's pull-on underwear, and it holds up to 34 ounces of fluid, 1,000 cc's. And it's popular in the home. It's popular in long-term care, assisted living environments. Fighter pilots buy these literally and wear them underneath their uniforms because they're so effective. But to your point, Doug, at night, and especially in the morning, sometimes when we wake up, the void can be very large. I worked with a gal who was caring for her husband. He was 6'6", 300 pounds, and touch of dementia. And unfortunately, he'd wake up every single night because he was wet. And she says, you try changing a guy that's 6'6", 300 pounds, right? and she had tried it. I'm not going to name all the brands, but literally she rattled off 5 brands, and she got her overnight pull-up. He slept through the night, first time. And she slept through the night, first time in a while. And she says that, how could you put a value on that? So we do have a lot of people that would wear an overnight pull-up at night in the daytime, which they're not as thick. So if you wear an overnight, sometimes during the day, they're not as discreet as our thinner products, but they hold a lot of fluid. But you could use, we have 3 levels of performance, and one holds 13.5 ounces, one holds 23, another one would hold 34.
Now, just out of curiosity, you're like one of the leading brands. We'll just say, you know, the one that most often people will use, like you would call something Kleenex rather than, you know, a facial tissue. So how do you guys compare as far as absorbency with those brands?
Yes.
Or that brand, I guess.
Yeah, because a lot of people use the brand name, and we all know who that is. And they do a great job. They spend $200 million a year in advertising. But it's equal to our lowest performing product. So it's great for lighter levels of incontinence and for people. And I think they really promote to a younger female audience that wants to be active during the day, which is great. They make them in colors, which I think sometimes is desirable for active people. We have a product at that performance level, but it really hasn't been our focus. We let, you know, the mass market retail people focus on that, and we focus more on the people with higher needs, which is the market that we all probably serve and are addressing today. But there's ways that you can do that. You can use our other products and with an insert. So one thing I'm big on is to be outside and be independent and go have lunch or hang out with family and friends, is to have a pad in the pant. And like one of our pads could hold up to 8 to 13 ounces. That's a full boy, right? And you could throw the pad away, leave the pull-up on, put another pad in. You never have to take your pants off in a public stall, which would be embarrassing, right? Would be tough to do. So the other products you would probably have to change in the stall. And I think a lot of people want to avoid that. So there are systems that are very helpful for you to be mobile and out and about, so you could wear a more discreet host garment with a pad inside. Does that make sense? And a lot of people buy our pads and put them in the Kleenex brand of pull-ups. It works.
Yeah.
Well, you
So,
know, I know
go
for
ahead.
women, you know, a lot of us are learning after childbirth that we are experiencing pelvic prolapse, and it can come on very quickly. And then all of a sudden it's like, why am I experiencing incontinence? And doctors are now starting to talk about it, and women are starting to be more aware of it. So I like your idea of the pad, because when you're out and about, you're not going to want to change your garment in a stall, or you may not be able to get to a clean stall to do it.
Yeah, and you see all the commercials on TV and about, you know, the fem care pads, but they might hold 3 ounces. So, I mean, that's for super light incontinence, that's fine. Our pads hold from 10 to 13. So it's, I told Doug earlier, it's like a you know what pad on steroids. Now, that could be overkill, obviously, but, you know, older women, they were used to wearing a pad years ago, and they have no problem wearing a pad today, because you don't want to be embarrassed. I mean, when people go out, the last thing you want is an accident where other people now are aware,
Exactly.
unfortunately, of your accident. So if it's a little thicker, so what? Right?
But, and I think this really kind of goes to quality of life as well. We can explore quality of life on 2 levels. One is obviously for the individual. You know, if someone has incontinence, so frequently they are embarrassed or worried about what could happen. So what they do is they will avoid going out in public.
Yes.
And so they avoid social situations. We've seen, because of COVID, what isolation does to people. It's not good, okay? And staying active and being involved in things is really, really important. You know, getting that social involvement. I have literally seen people this last 2 years aged like 10 years. And because they have had this social isolation that is literally killing them, you know? And so social isolation is a much bigger problem than most people have any idea how big it is and how much impact that it has on an older person. So if you can avoid something that will prevent someone from going out and not being, you know, worried about going out, I think you can really make a big difference in someone's quality of life, you know. The other thing is you know, just the embarrassment that can be involved with that. The other thing that can happen is the caregiver can also be isolating that person because they're afraid of having to change that person in a public place
Yes.
and all the things around that. So the person may be wanting and willing to go out, but the caregiver does not want to because they're going to be stuck with a big problem out in public, and that's not a good thing either. And then the third thing is quality of life for the caregiver in general. And where I see that as being really vital is, so if I have to get up 3 times at night to take care of a spouse that happens to have incontinence and they're waking up or they're not sleeping well, and so they're tossing and turning, or the other, you know, things where they're trying to get up to go to the bathroom because they have dementia and they're not thinking through, and that person now has to get up with them. You have this big issue, which is that person's not getting sleep. And if they've gotten up 3 times at night and it's on someone else's schedule that they're getting up, it's not like their body is waking them up. They're being awakened by someone else. It's like walking in on the living dead, you know, sometimes when I go in and do the intakes, you know, people are bloodshot and
Yep.
and exhausted and burnt out, you know.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, you know, dignity is key, right? And especially as we age. And you were talking about that in the VA. I've worked with some veterans, and they were younger veterans that had an injury, and they were withdrawn, depressed, afraid to go out because they're defective, right? But when they found super absorbent Tranquility, they could go out without worrying about an accident, right? And so I had another one. I had a doctor, a female doctor, urologist, and she said on days of surgery, this was in a VA hospital, she goes, I forego fluids. Why?
Mm.
Because I experience incontinence. And it's not good to deny yourself fluids. Can you imagine her doing surgery, being dehydrated?
Oh, yeah.
She is now wearing our PullUps. And so days of surgery, she's fully hydrated because she said, I can't just leave surgery.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting. So there's 2 examples, you know, kind of extreme, but one where a veteran was just so withdrawn and depressed, he was afraid to go out, where she was afraid to have fluids on days of surgery. And when you find super absorbent, because a lot of people think when they go to a store, this is as good as it gets, there must be something wrong with me.
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with you, right? This is something that is unfortunately common, and different people experience different levels, but there are better products out there. Unfortunately, like these products, you won't find them typically in a retail setting, Costco and stuff like that. You can find them online. Tranquility would be in Amazon and other sites where you can get it. DME drugstores, a lot of times they're available, but not necessarily in retail. And so to your point, Doug, we want to make it a no judgment zone. And meaning, if you go into grandma's house or go to visit and you smell urine, we form a judgment. It could be a judgment on grandma. It could be a judgment on the quality of care that grandma's getting or not getting, right? But with a super absorbent product, it can help kill that odor of urine. There's no judgment zone. Or when we go out in public or even just at home, you don't have accidents, you don't get judged. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it makes people more apt to go out and experience life and not be depressed, because, interacting with others is critical, as we have found out. And during the pandemic, it's been a really tough time on caregivers, right? And people at home that are challenged with this, people in acute care, long-term care settings, it's been a challenge. And so I think the demand, there's never been a greater time for a solution for people that are struggling with incontinence.
A lot of people don't understand how much depression plays a role in issues around aging. Because I will tell you, the number one thing that an older person is interested in is independence. That's what they want. And, we're talking about right now, a very proud group of individuals that we're kind of at the tail end of people who fought in World War II. We have a lot of people sort of at the Korean War era. But in all cases, these are people who went through or are highly affected by the Depression. And they made their way and they worked hard and they made a life. And we're very proud of that, the fact that they created, a good life for their families and other things. And to all of a sudden have that feeling like it's ripped out of your hands by all these indignities, it's a horrible, horrible thing for many people. And the result is a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of just despair is probably, and what I hear from you really is something that to me brings a different thing, which is hope. Because, one of the things that I always try to help people to do is to see what, not to think about what they can't do, but what the possibilities are. So an example might be, you can't drive anymore, but we can provide a driver. So it doesn't mean you can't get to where you're going. You are able to do that now. And similar thing with something like a protective undergarment of some sort, that allows someone to not be restricted, to not hold back, and to be able to do things that they want to do. It also allows people to sleep better at night, and you just go through all the things that start contributing to a poor quality of life. And something as I don't know what the term would be, but maybe mundane as protective, undergarments or pull-up underwear, or however someone wants to describe it, can make such a difference of quality of life.
I'm big on sleep, right? And I always said, if I was captured by the enemy and you wanted to know something, all you'd have to do is sleep deprive me one night. I'd tell you everything you wanted to know. Just please let me sleep, right? And the challenge is when we don't sleep well, we don't perform well, we don't feel well,
don't think well.
You don't, and
Yeah.
throw a comorbidity onto it, say diabetes, dementia, anything that you're trying to manage. It's harder to manage when you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Right. And then for a caregiver, like I always say to my daughter, I have a couple grandsons now, and I say, this is why young people have children, because I can't handle that sleep deprivation like I used to. When you're young, you can handle it, but when you're old, man, you need your sleep, right? And so this is a way to ensure, because I always say, how do you put a value on a good night's sleep?
You
Right.
mentioned, you
And that
mentioned,
nickel
yeah,
doesn't matter.
you mentioned the companies that are out there feeding us commercials about how sexy their underwear is. But yet it only, gathers a very small portion of what many need today. How do people find out about your product other than going online? I mean, is the urologist, the gynecologist, are they telling people that, hey, this may be better for you?
Yes, so I would say there's in the industry, a lot of people are very familiar with it, but in the retail world, because we don't spend millions of dollars, I always like to say we're the best kept secret in incontinence. However, VA world, like I was sharing with Doug earlier, we're the #1 brand in the VA, and now we're the fastest growing brand in VA home care outpatient. We're very prevalent in home care already and growing quickly. Retail. So we specialized in years ago where we really started working with children that were experiencing spina bifida, MRDD, autistic children. We don't make baby diapers, and that's where a lot of people get known as they start in the baby diapers and they move up. But we really focused in on kids, special needs kids. And then there was a need for superior products for adults, and we focused in on that. Bariatric care is a specialty for us. So anybody in a urology clinic or bariatric care, they're very familiar with Tranquility. Long-term care is an area where we're known. Assisted living is growing very quick. So where could they get it? Local drugstores. A lot of drugstores have it, but your Rite Aid and stuff, they're going to promote their brands. They private label, and they, brand X, they get a big shelf there because they pay a lot of money to be on that shelf. We don't necessarily do that, but independent drugstores, we're very prevalent. Get online, Amazon.com. They'll ship it right to your door. There's a bunch of other providers. Distribution companies, we work with all the major distributors, but that's mainly supplying long-term care, right? Assisted living and hospitals. So events like this make people more aware of it, and they know how to find it.
Now, I have I'd like to wrap up with a question around not just the how, availability of things, but what products should I get? In other words, what would be the way if I were someone watching this, and I know that there's a whole bunch of products. I don't really know the brands. I look online, I see that there's a number of different things. Is there a way that I could, if I were looking at this green, is there a way that I might be able to get some help to say what would be the right product? What would be the right absorbency, and how do I go about getting that?
Great question, Doug. So tranquilityproducts.com, you can find all kinds of information, but we also have an 800 number where people can call and consult. We have people that work with consumers every day, all day. We're discreetly answer questions. 1-800-467-3224. extension 7, they can call that number, and then www.tranquilityproducts.com. And you can get on there and you can do your own research and stuff. But what it really does, Doug, to answer your question, is what type of product. You would ask questions like, are you mobile? Are you active? Right? You would probably wear adult disposable underwear, is what we call it, DAUs, disposable adult underwear. You could need an insert. You might just need a pad that tapes inside your underwear. It could be stress or urge incontinence, right? Laugh, sneeze, cough, or a little more. We have those products that's all you need. You might not need a diaper because dignity-wise, people don't want to wear, right?
Something with tabs, right?
Exactly.
That's what it,
yeah. But if you have somebody that is bed-bound or maybe in a wheelchair, it might make more sense to wear a brief with tape tabs, right? Babies wear diapers, adults wear briefs, and those are very effective, easy for the caregiver to change, right? Underpads would be protecting the bed, but they're great for repositioning. So if you want to get somebody to slide them up in bed, or you want to slide them over or turn them over, a super absorbent underpad, breathable. That's the key. You don't want plastic behind somebody because plastic creates heat. So I always like to say, you do not have a moisture situation we cannot help you with. You don't have one.
Now
And
that's
so-
interesting. One thing I will say is you guys must be really different with that underpad, because I can tell you that most of the underpads that are out there with the plastic and paper, you are not using that to pull someone up. It's going to tear if you do that. So yours must be a really different product.
That's a good point, because so many people use chucks, they call them, right? And nurses and aides are all familiar with chucks, but they're plastic, number one, and they don't absorb. So what they do is they bunch up, and people tend to use 3, 4, 5 on a bed. But with that plastic, it's a slip and fall risks where you can literally slide right out of bed. So with one of our breathable underpads, it allows the air through. So the skin still is breathing and staying dry, but it won't allow fluid to the bed because the super absorbent polymers catch it. So in hospitals and long-term care, you have low air loss beds, air mattresses that blow air through to prevent pressure sores from happening. These were made for those that actually developed for the VA. They requested a super absorbent, super strong, breathable product that can hold up to a quart of fluid. So it's our #1 selling underpad right now. One would last you a day or so, where the others you're going to use 4 or 5 a day.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's why I think in the end, people have to think about value. The fact that you have both a really robust website, but also that 800 number where people can walk someone through it. And I could say, I assume if I said, hey, a little bit of leaking during the day, but not much of a problem, heavy at night, they would recommend, why don't you use this during the day and something else at night when in a kind of a consultative type of fashion. Now, if I understand things right, you also will send out some stuff for people to try.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Free samples are our best sales tools. So I think I showed with you that, we have these little trifolds we hand out to providers. But if you call that number, Tranquility is very generous with samples, because what they'll do is consult with you to find the right size, type of product, maybe your little system, and they'll send it to you free for you to trial yourself at home. And then you'll know what size, because sizing is key. You want to be in the right size. But the free samples are the best sales tool, because you can tell right away if it's a product for you or not. And that's why we're so generous, because once you find it, you're going to keep buying it.
So, one of our goals as a company is to bring about solutions. And so, one of the things that we have worked out with you guys is for our customers, they're able to get a discount by doing it. We get nothing from this as a company. I just, when I see something good, and if we can help our folks by working some sort of a partnership or other things, I think we've have jumped to trying to do something, because frankly, I'm skeptical. I want something that is good. I really believe that quality and the value proposition is important to look at. And so, I just saw your product. I saw the demonstration, and really believed what I saw. And so, it's also great that you're an Ohio company and near Bowling Green, which was the school that I went to, and
2 of my daughters.
Yeah, so that's also a big plus, So anyway, I really appreciate the time that you took to kind of explain things and hopefully get people thinking a little bit differently about how they approach incontinence with their family members.
Well, I think it was important that you were really into the education, right? If we can become informed of what is available and what's out there Two, I mentioned earlier about removing the stigmatism on incontinence, right? This is not like, something evil or bad. It's just common. Unfortunately, it's common. And so we want to make it a no judgment zone by eliminating the odor and the leakage and stuff so people can participate in life more fully. And then we can assist any of the caregivers out there that are struggling, right, to manage. There's over 50 million unpaid caregivers out there, and then paid caregivers as well. And incontinence is a big deal in that environment. So if we empower them and individuals to take control, right? And I like to say, take control of incontinence, right? And with the right products, you can. So tranquilityproducts.com, go check it out. You can order a free sample there. Work with companies like Cherished Companions that are really up on this, that are really going out of their way to educate and offer things to their clients that can help them age in place longer and successfully, and by restoring dignity and just getting kind of people independent for longer periods of time.
That's great. Well, again, thank you for the time, and
Thanks for having us.
And maybe we'll do this again. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Karen,
Thanks to
thanks.
both of you. Have a great day.
Take care.
Thank you.